Welcome to Above Replacement Radio. I am your host, Chris Gianta. I might be becoming a bad baseball fan who can't enjoy the romantic things because of advanced statistics. 15 years from now, I want to be on the early baseball committee. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran.
I literally have the Fangraphs hoodie, the baseball reference t-shirt, just repping some stats, you know what I'm saying?
It's not necessarily Hall of Fame. It's not necessarily above average, but we can guarantee you we are better than just the standard replacement level college sophomore.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. It is August 22nd. We're, very much into the dog days of summer, but September's coming soon. Pennant races are heating up. Wildcard races are heating up. And we got a guest today to talk about one of the teams that are kind of in the fringe of that wildcard race.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to be an absolute pleasure that we've had Chris Cotillo on. I mean, as of recording this, we haven't yet had the interview, but we will be getting into it later on. But yeah, it's a pleasure. I mean, the guy has been, Chris Cotillo, if you don't know, he has been the one of the Red Sox beat writers for MassLive since May of 2018. So he's really seen the gamut. He's seen the World Series. He's seen the fallout since the World Series, the Dombrowski firing, the Heimblum hiring, the Alex Cora removal, and then going back into charge. Like he's seen a lot with the Red Sox organization as a beat writer.
And just in such a short time too.
Right. I mean, we've seen the organization go from full buy all the time to kind of a more, nuanced approach to things, whether it be good or bad, sometimes good, sometimes bad, which is very intriguing. And I'm really excited to see what his thoughts are on all of this. And yeah, definitely, and one of the best guys out there too, very accessible, and always interacts well with the fans and observers of the Red Sox. So without further ado, here's that interview with Chris Cotillo. So for the interview, I'm going to be looking like this, different angle than you're used to, but that is because in the middle of Daniel's preview of the week ahead with starting pitching matchups, my power just went out for no reason. I know there's a hurricane, but that is 3,000 miles away from me. Maybe I got a little bit of the effect there, but I think what really happened is maybe a car just crashed into a power pole, something carrying power lines nearby. But that is why I'm on my phone. My audio might be a little off in the interview. So now we're into the interview with Chris Cotillo.
All right, and we are happy to be joined by Red Sox beat writer for MassLive, Chris Cotillo. Chris, it's been quite a long time coming, and we're finally here. So how's it going?
It's good, guys. How are you? Good to see you both.
We're doing well. So you've been covering the Red Sox. This is what, your sixth season now?
Yeah, I started in the middle of 2018. So that year, I don't know if that year counts because they didn't lose any games that I covered. They just kept winning the whole time, and so This is and then 2020 we could throw out. So it's somewhere between 4 and 6 seasons. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. So, what have been the biggest similarities and differences between when you started covering the Red Sox to now? Obviously, you've seen a lot of turnover in the front office, the manager, and certainly the on-field product. So, what have been the biggest differences for you?
For me, it's when I went in there, it was a lot of very established players who had been there for a while, and they had, from a beat perspective, they had relationships with a lot of the reporters who had already been there. The clubhouse I walked into was full of superstars, whether it be, Mookie or Bogarts, JD, Kimbrel was in there, Sale, Porcello had a Cy Young, Price had a Cy Young. It was a lot of very, very, very accomplished guys. And a lot of star power, I think, and Dombrowski and Cora's first year. Now, it's not a bad team, but it just doesn't have the star power. There's kind of that emerging core because, call it what you will, over the last few years, they've been trying to rebuild. They haven't rebuilt where they've purposefully been absolutely horrible. A couple of years they have been, accidentally horrible in 2020 and 2022. But, it's kind of guys now who are trying to make their way into the majors, establish themselves as part of the young core. Back then, it was a lot of big-time stars. And so Chris Smith, my partner at MassLive, and I were talking a lot heading into this season about, who's the second best player on the Red Sox behind Devers. And there's, guys who have stepped up, and might be Yoshida, it might be Turner, it might be, Sale when he's healthy, or all these different guys. But that was a question heading into the year, and back a few years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. So I think the biggest difference is that, and then just kind of how Bloom approaches things versus how Dombrowski approaches things. They couldn't really be more different in style. Dombrowski said, screw the prospects, I want to win right now, and Heim has more of that long-term view. And I think in today's game, both work. I think in a place that's as impatient as Boston, it's a tough kind of hill for Heim to try to climb and eventually potentially die on if it doesn't work. But I think we're seeing the fruits of his labor now. So it is, we kind of, it's been an interesting lesson on how much can happen for an organization in 5-6 years too. If you think back, again, I started like Memorial Day in 2018. So they won the World Series. They didn't lose a game. 2019 happens. They are middling, and then Dombrowski gets fired. That's a huge piece of news. After the season, the Cora scandal, he gets fired. They trade Mookie. There's a COVID season. Cora comes back. 21, another surprise playoff run, big moves. Last year, a big signing with Story. Bogarts leaves. The Devers extension. Like, there's been a lot of very newsworthy days and moments. I've kind of seen it all, I think, which has been cool to be in this position for all that. And also just the turnover, right? Like, there's only Devers and Sale are left who were there when I first started on the job. So it's been a lot of change, but it's been a lot of fun too.
Right. And one of the things you mentioned is the kind of the opposite approaches of Dave Dombrowski, the former president of baseball ops, and Chaim Bloom, who's currently the chief baseball officer over there. But also, I think there's been a large difference in how ownership has approached, tackling this baseball team. They've gone from a top 3 payroll before, they fired Dombrowski to, according to Spot Track right now, they have the 13th highest payroll in baseball, which is unusual for the Red Sox. So how much do you think it has to do with a factor of front office, and how much does it have to do with ownership?
Yeah, I mean, part of that is, Devers' deal doesn't really kick in and get to the 30 million range until next year, and so it's about to go higher. And I do think they're gonna, add a big time free agent or two, and that's gonna go back up. I think part of it too is just that we've seen that the big payroll teams are not as rewarded as they used to be. Whether it be, the Mets or Padres or Yankees this year, it's not, or, the Angels a lot of years, it's not really the only way to build a team. And we've seen, kind of the smarter, lower payroll teams do better, which, does give teams an opportunity to be somewhat, I don't know, give them an excuse to potentially be cheaper, I guess. It's, as I've said for years now, it's tough to really, really put your finger on how attentive ownership is when we are not around to see them on a daily basis. I mean, I'm around, they're not around to talk to us. So John Henry hasn't addressed the media in a formal setting since the Mookie trade. Tom Warner barely, he did it after the Devers contract. Sam Kennedy hasn't really been around Fenway this year. So I know they're involved. It's just kind of tough to see it kind of play out on a daily basis because you don't know. I don't think Heim's default is to be cheap. He just hasn't found that, those opportunities to be the smartest ones so far. Like, he gave out the biggest deal in Red Sox history to a guy in Devers and signed Story for $140 million, and gave Whitlock an extension. I know that was, smaller money relatively, but he's shown his willingness to spend, and I think, the real competitive window starts next year. If he doesn't go and spend on, whether it be Blake Snell or Nola or one of those types of guys or two of those types of guys, I think it'll be, disappointing. But if you look at, the money he did spend last offseason, whether it be for, Devers and that extension, Yoshida was a big deal, Jansen $16 million a year, Martin almost $10 million a year. He did go out and try to, add a lot of pieces to try to make this team. Turner, 15, 16 million for the season. So 13th is not, where they used to be, but I don't think that they're afraid of spending money. And again, that Devers deal, that's the biggest in franchise history. So they just did that. And, who knows how well it's going to age. We're talking on a day after he made, more defensive miscues in the field, and looks like he's going to have to be moved off that position sooner rather than later. But he can mash, and they're counting on that for really a decade to come.
Yeah. And that, and his youth, he's what, like 25, 26 right now, and that
Yep.
deal won't end until he's 36 years old. So there's the benefit of that. One thing that you kind of talked about, you touched on earlier, was throwing out the 2020 season, but like it did happen. So I'm very curious from a beat writer's perspective, what was it like covering baseball in that year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the rest of the world wanted to be at baseball games that summer. Seeing the empty stadiums and on TV, and as somebody who was there, I didn't want to be there. It was very depressing, like I was sitting in the press box. There's probably less than 100 people in the building other than the players. Look, I've said this time and time again to everybody who's ever asked. It seemed like just like a summer-long fever dream, just being there for games in an empty stadium with the crowd noise and the cutouts in the seats and just kind of weird stuff. We didn't travel at all. So they played 60 games total, 30 at home, obviously. And then we had to split that up because they only let one person per outlet in on a daily basis. And to me, that was only me half the time. So I did probably 14, 15 games. It was really strange. We were Zooming the players who were in the same building as us. They were downstairs. We had no access to them. I lived right near Fenway at the time. There was literally 0 point to go into the ballpark. Like we could go to the games. It was an excuse to get out of the apartment while everything else was closed, but
Right.
you didn't get anything from going. And it was depressing. I remember tweeting at the end of that season kind of a picture of Fenway. I said, next time I hear, I hope a lot more of you are with me. And that was 12% for the beginning of 2021, and then it quickly amped up back to 100% within a couple months. But it was weird. The Red Sox were also wretched. I mean, they were throwing out guys on a daily basis who I had never heard of, like literally guys that I had not heard of who were making starts for them. And, the whole Renicky thing, and he was a good guy put in a horrible spot, but they were, it got them Marcelo Meyer. So I think when the history of the organization is written, it'll be a successful season just based on that, but tough to watch on a daily basis.
Yeah, shout out to Josh Osich, former Red Sox starter. The only could happen in 2020. But yeah, that was a really interesting year, and I think going into the front office differences from before Bloom to during Bloom, the last couple of trade deadlines, with trade deadlines generally, it's pretty clear what an organization's direction is, but that's kind of failed to be the case with the Red Sox the past couple. What has it been like covering these trade deadlines and kind of being maybe surprised at the action or lack of action with the Red Sox?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that this deadline taught us is that just more confirmation that Chaim Bloom's going to be extremely principled and extremely, stuck in his ways in a way where, like, if he doesn't feel like the right deal's on the table, he's not going to force it, and would you have given up Ceddanne Rafaela for Aaron Savali? Probably not, right? And that's kind of like what was on the table for them. And I think that he just looks at it and said, look, this does not make the organization better. A guy like Dave Dombrowski would say it probably makes the major league team better this second, and maybe he'd do it. But Bloom's never going to do that type of move. And I think some of the stuff that we've seen this year, whether it be the rise of Casas or Wong or Duran or Cutter Crawford or Bayo or all these guys who are kind of emerging as that young core, are going to let Chaim see this through. So, different deadlines for sure. His first one in 20 was kind of an all-out sale. If you look at that and who they gave up a bunch of bit parts. Moreland at the end of his career, Kevin Pillar, Hembry and Workman, who are horrendous for the Phillies down the stretch and basically haven't really pitched since. They got Nick Pivetta as kind of the only piece out of all those guys that ended up working out, and he's worked out and been an important piece of the team for, I know he's been horrible at times, but he's been very good down the stretch here. He's big in 21. So over the course of really 3 seasons now has been important. So that trade deadline is a win for them. 2021, Schwarber was really a game changer down the stretch. That's a win. Last year's deadline, I think, was the one that stands out as the bad one. They really screwed themselves by trading Vasquez and not really getting any good players, in terms of the guys they added to the major league roster. Hosmer barely played for them. Pham was below average. McGuire's an okay backup catcher, but a lot riding on Wilyer Abreu, who makes his debut today, coming up, and Emmanuel Valdez, who they got in that Vasquez trade, considering how angry the clubhouse was. And then this year, it was tough, I think, for fans. Were really excited about the possibilities of doing something one way or another, and the fact he basically did nothing. Again, I understand the rationale. The prices were too high to add, and he didn't want to completely give up. They were stuck that's when you're mediocre, you're stuck in those situations. So, the story of this deadline, won't be told until we see what they do in the offseason. Like, he's got to be aggressive at some point. He was with Yoshida, he was with Devers over the last winter, and I think, big time spending really needs to start this winter. And if he's able to do that and he kept all the prospects, kind of that core intact by not doing much of the deadline, then I think that makes a lot of sense. But it was weird. It was kind of once that day started, we were in Seattle, like, when are they going to do something? They have to do something, right? They have to. And then they didn't, except, get Grand Slam specialist Luis Urias. So it's inaction is kind of the default sometimes. I don't think that can be the case for much longer.
Right. And with that, like, there were a lot of different conversations being had. I imagine a lot of different players being discussed in this most recent trade deadline. And something that intrigued me, and I was kind of curious as to what the conversations were like, was with James Paxton, particularly because I think with the Dodgers, there were reports that they had shown interest in James Paxton after Eduardo Rodriguez decided not to go there via his no trade clause. So I'm wondering if, like, how serious were the talks for the Red Sox to move James Paxton? And obviously the price didn't fit the mold, but how serious were the talks with that potential trade?
I've never really gotten a sense of that. I think that the Dodgers probably spent so much time on the Erod deal to the point where it got agreed to, that they probably were just scrambling toward the end of the day and, were kind of throwing out last minute offers. And, I've always said the Red Sox in the front office, the way they operate right now, does not really do particularly well at the deadline. They're very kind of measured, planning. Let's take this step by step, make sure we're making a sound decision group. And when there's a deadline, you get an offer thrown at you with 2 minutes to spare. They're not the type of team that's just going to say, yeah, screw it, we'll do it, like Dombrowski was. And so that's kind of what I assume happened behind the scenes on something like Paxton. Hindsight 2020, almost a month later, right? Like, they probably should have moved off of him because he's showing signs of being rusty. And if you could get a pretty good prospect like the White Sox got for Giolito, maybe you do that deal. But it's just, I think Heim was a little bit afraid too of the clubhouse thinking that they were giving up for a second straight year because they were super deflated after they moved Vasquez last year. It just, everything kind of fell apart quickly, and I don't think you wanted to risk that happening again.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly an interesting deadline, and Luis Urias, obviously he's done well, but he was kind of the one guy brought in. Was there a similar kind of notion in the clubhouse this year with not a lot done, or was it kind of just like, okay, no one's gone, so that's a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes either way. I think there was some relief that nobody got traded from the major league roster, but there's also kind of a feeling like they could have added more, and that was, I think, the part. There are some veterans that are pretty vocal about wanting to add. Rafael Devers had said that kind of on the record to the Globe a couple weeks before, or a couple days before, saying we need pitching, and it just they didn't do that. I think that might be frustrating. At the same time, they were happy that Paxton and Duvall and those guys stayed, and I think the Red Sox did have, and it's an excuse they use, but a good built-in excuse too of getting Sale, Story, Whitlock, and Houck back. Like those guys, they're better than anybody you can get at the trade deadline. Yeah, probably. I mean, Story's been horrendous so far, and Sale, up and down his 2 outings, and Whitlock very up and down. Houck comes back tonight. But like, their roster is a good roster right now. Like, is it too late? Probably. Are they facing too many good teams down the stretch? Probably. But it's a good roster, and they have kind of a competitive pitcher going out there, every night starting wise now. Like, you have Sale, who still has shown that ceiling. Bayo, obviously, Crawford's had a very underrated year, is a good guy. Paxton last night notwithstanding has been good. They think Houck's going to be better than he was early in the season. Pivetta on his days. Chris Murphy's getting optioned today, but he's been pretty good. And then the bullpen, from Jansen backwards, Jansen, Martin, Schreiber, Winkowski, Whitlock, like they have a very good staff, right? And like if you had another guy, there probably wouldn't be room for him. They have to send Chris Murphy down today, So like, is it too late? Maybe, but that's they're just the injuries piled up at a bad time, and they were getting all these guys back kind of around now, and they knew that. And 22 days later, 3 weeks since the trade deadline, could they have won a couple more ball games in the last 3 weeks if they had added Rich Hill? Who knows? So they just determined ultimately that the price was not worth it, and that's something Heim has determined a lot of times over his course of time here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as the off seasons pile up, so does the pressure to budge, give in, add a major piece. If you had to rate it 1 through 10, what would you say the pressure? How much pressure do you think the Red Sox have to make a major move this upcoming offseason?
I think it's pretty high, and they have made major moves now in the last couple of years. As I talked about, it wasn't just, Story a couple of years ago, but also Yoshida, Jansen, the Devers extension's huge. I think that the window to really contend starts now. If you look at who's a free agent after the year, it's not, the superstars we've seen in years past. I mean, last year, Evaldi, Bogarts, JD, Hill and Waka and all these guys that were huge pieces. Vasquez was going to be. That's why everybody called it senior year, right? Like that's the year everybody's kind of heading out at the same time. This year it's Paxton, who's nice but older and a bit piece. Duvall, who is nice but older and a bit piece. And Jansen, Turner, who has been really, really good, but is 38. And I think they'll probably make every effort to re-sign him. So you have like pretty much everybody coming back who is really part of your core moving forward. Your bullpen is stacked already. All those guys I just mentioned, Jansen and Martin, are under control for next year. Winkowski, Schreiber, and Whitlock for many years to come. If you want to throw Houck into that mix, he is too. Bayo and Crawford, you have 5-6 more years of them. You have Sale for another year next year. You have Pivetta for another year. Verdugo, I think they're probably going to trade him, but he's under control for another year. Duran for a while. Rafaela, right on the verge. Casas for a while. Urias and Reyes, Wong, McGuire. These guys are all like not going to be free agents for a bit. Minus really kind of Verdugo and Turner and some of those guys I mentioned. So it's now about supplementing that, and I think going out and getting a number 2 starter or a number 1 type of guy, whether you go out and sign Blake Snell or you sign maybe somebody like Aaron Nola, Yamamoto. There's like a lot of options there where, you could go out and get a big-time name. There's also, I think, the possibility of a trade where this would kind of hurt Chaim Bloom more because he's always more willing to spend money than spend prospect capital, especially if you have to give up, a Meyer or a Roman Anthony or a Rafaela or somebody in that mold. Look towards Seattle, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby. Look at Pittsburgh, Mitch Keller. Look at, the White Sox with Cease. Those are the types of guys that could be available.
Milwaukee, Corbin Burns.
Yep. I mean, there's a lot of guys who are out there. Who knows if he's willing to do that? I think he'd be more likely to just sign, maybe Snell and Nola and have a stacked rotation. And but you give up draft picks for some of those guys too. So they need to add there. I think the rest of the roster, the bullpen, like I said, is really, really good. And they have, 3 guys there, Winkowski, Schreiber, and Whitlock, who are going to be probably, relievers for them for a long time and be good. Bernardino's a guy that's come out of nowhere and probably, has a roster spot for a few years. Murphy, Walter. But they don't have that pitching pipeline, the top starting pitching prospects who are close to the majors right now. All those guys kind of burned through those guys in the last couple of years where, Drohan's not been good at AAA. Walter's a reliever now. Murphy's a reliever now. Mata's been hurt. Seabold's not with the organization. Winkowski's a reliever. Like they've gotten Crawford and Bayo up, but the rest of them, there's not much in terms of AAA, AA talent right now. So I'd say that's kind of the big need, and the pressure is pretty high. So I'll say about an 8 out of 10 to add to the rotation, and the rest of the team around it. I mean, you can make an argument that the position player side of things is pretty much set, unless you want to go out and make a big upgrade at second base. The rotation really is the piece they need to add to.
Yeah, it is a very interesting offseason to have that much pressure to add to the rotation because, if you look at the options, it's, Shohei Ohtani's in his own class, but that's just an entirely different thing that, every team will be, or a lot, all the big markets teams, the Dodgers, the Mets will be very in on. And then you look at anything below and it's like Snell, who is, has doing very well this year, who might, ask for a lot of money. There's Nola, who's having a bit of a down year. Urias Yamamoto. But, when you look at number 2 quality pitcher at the very least on the free agent market, I think it kind of goes no further than that. So, with a lot of pressure, I think there's not a lot of names out there, which I think adds a lot more pressure to a team that already needs it.
Yeah, well, when they sign Ohtani, it'll all be fine.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when ticket prices go up 40%.
Yeah, be worth it.
Yep.
So pivoting away from the Red Sox for a second and pivoting more towards social media. One of my favorite things about following Chris Cotillo on Twitter is the handling of the people who maybe are talking too much, maybe shouldn't be speaking as loudly as they are, and even just a simple retweet of some, abomination to the sense of grammar is, something. It gives me a chuckle. What has been your progression with, dealing with people on Twitter?
Yeah, my biggest troll is at David Cotillo 1, my father. So, it kind of is all downhill from there. No, I've told you guys before, like I used to get really, really irritated by people being nasty on Twitter. Now I laugh it off. I have a lot of different ways of kind of dealing with it. At the end of the day, it's not that serious. It's just baseball, and people get so worked up and so offended. And, if the Red Sox spend money in a place that's, not great, it's not your money. Calm down. It's fine. It's going to be okay. And I know people are passionate. That's what makes it cool. I'm not level-headed when I'm talking about the North Carolina basketball Tar Heels either, so I understand where it comes from. But, as I kind of learned throughout my career, somebody reads your work and says, this is awesome, I agree with everything you said. Somebody reads your work and says, this is the worst thing I've ever read, and you suck. That's 2 people reading your work, right? That's 2 readers. It's better than 0. It's better than 1. So I kind of look at it that way. It does get under my skin when people question the process or say you're making things up or you're not credible. We work our asses off in this job to kind of be the liaison between the teams and the fans and bring credible work and all that type of stuff. When people kind of crap on that a little bit, family show, that I get irritated, and sometimes I'll snap back or, just try to explain things. Yesterday, and you come off as a homer sometimes, but yesterday someone was saying Red Sox have no urgency sitting Justin Turner. How are they sitting Justin Turner today? Like, dude, the guy can't walk right now. He just played 18 innings in the field on a bone bruise on his heel. Like, he barely can walk. They have to sit him, right? Like, he's going to be out for the rest of the year if you don't sit him tonight. So, that might be a little dramatic, but really. So, it's different ways. I wish I was a little bit better at ignoring all of it all the time, but you can't be perfect. So, and I'm far from it.
Yeah, no, that was it is Red Sox fans especially are just very interesting to look at on Twitter and to see what comes from them, especially in these recent years where there hasn't been as much of an urgency to win now.
Yeah, well, I think that there's also the fact that they got very, very spoiled very quickly. The fans now are used to, they've seen 4 championships and from between 14 and 18 or 04 and 18. If it's championship or bust. I think fans who are older and get to see a lot of the curse and live through it and are very appreciative of the 4 titles. Realize that you're not going to win it every year. But they were winning it, once in that stretch, once every kind of 3 years or so, 3.5 years. So it makes you think that they should do it every year. But it's hard. There's 30 teams going for it. How many teams have we seen, not be able to? I know the Astros just won their second one, but there's not a lot of teams that have won, multiple titles in the last 10 years or so.
Technically, no one's gone back to back in our lifetimes, in my lifetime at least.
Yeah, So, as I said, as a Tar Heel fan, they should be among the top 5 teams in the country every year, and sometimes they're just not. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and it's like it's championship or bust all the time. You really shouldn't look at it that way because there's a lot of really good teams and a lot of smart people trying to win. But fans get frustrated, and I think part of it is that the ownership, not talking and not being front facing makes people really question, like, what's the goal here? What are we trying to do? And I think that's fair. That's why I kind of call on them over and over and over again to kind of tell us what they're thinking, and they won't do it. And I think fans get pretty irritated. But it's Heim is trying to be patient, so I guess fans should be too. When you say that, they're called a member of the Bluminati, but there we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does happen. That does indeed happen. So now to get into the question that we ask every single guest that we have on the program, it kind of it opens up a lot. There's a lot of different answers you could go with. If you could go, pre-2015, you get any player in baseball history's StatCast data, you get their percentiles, you get how hard they hit the ball or threw the ball, you get all that. Pre-2015, you get any player in baseball history. Who do you go with?
Ted Williams, probably. I mean, you just kind of look at the I was looking at his numbers the other day. One of the Red Sox PR guys and I were talking about the fact he only ever played against 7 teams, which you never would think about, but it's true. I mean, I guess it makes sense in retrospect, but not something that's top of mind. Just to see, his dominance and what his numbers were throughout his career, to see all that stuff would be pretty cool.
You want to see if he hit the red seat?
Yes.
And, did he really hit 502 feet that one day?
Yeah, that. I would like to see that primarily. He's no Rowdy Tellez. I think StatCast screwed up one day and said he hit one like 505 at Fenway. So,
yeah.
But yeah, that would be one reason, but of many, to see Ted's stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be that would be very interesting. Like seeing all the chase rate stuff. I'm sure he didn't swing it much more than like 15% of the pitches out of the zone. Like, I think also it'd be interesting to do the Juan Soto comparison, because a lot of people compare Juan Soto to Ted Williams. So there's a lot of different angles to go with there. Well, with that, I think that wraps up our interview. Thank you very much for coming on and letting us know all the Red Sox inside information, or close to it. So we appreciate you having on. We appreciate having you on. And yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it as always.
Wow, what a great interview that was.
Yeah, I mean, outside of all the, outside of him saying he's quitting tomorrow and he's gonna go into like welding.
Yeah,
I think that kind of threw me off, but yeah, other than that, I think we got a lot of good information. It was crazy what he said about how they're gonna hire Tony La Russa at the end of the season.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. They're gonna rehire him, actually.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
they did used to have him.
They're gonna take him out of the front office and put him as an on-field manager, which is really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely good stuff there. But yeah, and now we will get into, there's not really many topics to talk about here. It's been only a few days since we were on the airwaves. But one thing did strike me, and every once in a while we'll have our own personal rants. Sometimes Daniel goes off, sometimes I go off. And, this is partially just observational for me. And it has to do with Gunnar Henderson's performance on Sunday, I believe.
I think it was Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, Sunday against the Oakland A's. He is 3 for 3 or 3 for 4 with a double, triple, and home run. And he's coming up for another at bat. He hits a sharp ground ball down the right field line. It's obvious he's going to get 2, and he, forbids passes up on the chance for a cycle, and he goes and gets the double. And all the Twitter responses, all the easy things to say are like, oh, he should have stopped at first, or like, I would have faked an injury and stopped at first. It's a 10-1 ball game. Let's get that cycle. And for
he
me
just intentionally
personally,
trips him over himself. That would have been really funny. Like Francisco Lindor on his first hit.
yeah, absolutely. So, but it's kind of goes back to the thing for me of like how cycles are kind of a weird in-game accomplishment to celebrate. I think just the reason we celebrate it is because it's cool. It's sort of like baseball bingo. And also shout out to the person who first introduced me to this take was actually someone I think most of his takes are bad, but it's Tony Maserati from Felger and Maz on 98.5 The Sports Hub. But it was back in like 2015. I think Brock Holt had hit for the cycle.
So he had to spin it into a negative take against it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But he brought up a good point with this, in that it's baseball bingo. Like a 4-homer game is obviously way more impressive, but also, what Gunnar Henderson did, technically for sure, is more impressive than a cycle, which is 2 doubles, a triple, and a home run, as opposed to single, double, triple, home run. And I'm not knocking cycles completely. It's overall a very impressive offensive day, because if you go 4 for 4 with a cycle, that's a 3,500 OPS on the day. So I mean, that's just incredible to see. I've personally seen a cycle in person, and that was really cool to see. However, this leads into my next point. Cycles are only cool if they end on a triple or a home run. Like if you end on a single, it's just kind of like, especially like if you intentionally get the single, if you could have gotten more, I think that just it defeats the purpose of the coolness of the cycle. There's a moment with the cycle that makes it really cool. Was Benji Molina's cycle, did that end on a triple, or was that just part
I'm pretty
of it?
sure it did, yeah.
Yeah, so like that moment, it's just not the same if it's ending on a single or even like a stand-up double. It's just not the same. Same thing with the cycle I viewed in person.
Who
Mookie
was it?
Betts.
Oh,
Mookie
right, the
Betts,
Mookie Betts one.
yeah, in Toronto against the Blue Jays in the Rogers Center. He had a triple, double, and single, on the books already. It was the 9th inning, albeit they were down by 4, and he slams a home run into left field, and it was really, really cool because it ended on a home run. But if he already had the home run, double, and triple, and he like smacked one in the gap and just stopped at first base, I'd be like, well, all right. But it's anticlimactic if it ends on a single. And the last thing I'll say is, what does it say about a single game accomplishment if you might have to compromise your performance to complete it? Like, that's just there's nothing. There's no other single game accomplishment that's like that. There's no like no hitter, you have to allow no hits. Perfect game, you have to allow no base runners. I guess potentially with a no hitter, you could take an easy way out and like walk somebody, but that's never really the case. So like, I don't know. That's my thing with cycles.
So I'll give my take on the Gunnar Henderson thing. I would have had no problem if he stopped at first. Like, I get it, it would have been a little selfish, but like they were already up 10-1. It didn't really mean anything. If they were up like 3-2 or down 3-2, then yeah, it would have been something a lot different. Especially because like if you get the cycle in a game, that only guarantees you 1 run for your team.
Yeah,
you can hit a triple and get stranded. You can hit a double and get stranded. Obviously, if you hit a home run, that's a run no matter what. But yeah, I mean, hitting for the cycle only guarantees you 1 run. So it's very possible to hit for the cycle and still have a relatively unproductive game as a team, as you saw in Toronto there, Chris. The Red Sox, I think, only scored like 4 runs that game, right?
Yeah. They lost 8-5, I believe.
8-5, yeah, close enough. So, I mean, a lot of the times the cycle happens in a blowout game because guys get like 4 or 5 or 5 or 6 plate appearances or whatever. That was the case here. If Gunnar Henderson stopped at first, I wouldn't have cared, like I said, because it was already 10-1 anyway. Like, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. And he's like a young guy. My favorite thing that's come out of this, though, from what I've seen on Twitter, I've only seen one person that's ever stopped at first to get the cycle, and it was Jeff Fry. And I don't know if you're familiar with Jeff Fry on Twitter, but he is the most whiny, old school guy that I've ever seen, and it's so against everything that he's ever tweeted about.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not that familiar with it, but I feel like I've heard him and potentially bad takes.
he went super viral like a couple weeks ago because I don't know if you saw this, Chris, but there was a video of Manny Ramirez's son like bat flipping on a home run in whatever like summer league he was playing in, and he said like, I played with his dad and I never saw him do this. It's like, did you close your eyes every time Manny Ramirez was hitting? Because he absolutely did this. Like his most famous career moment was him doing that, actually.
God, that is crazy. That is perfect that he was the one dude to do that.
Yeah. Because
With
yeah,
while video was available.
yeah. I mean, I can't imagine anyone did it in like the 70s. That feels like a very lame thing to have done back then.
Right. Yeah, no,
Like
that's
it seems like a very unwritten rule police type thing.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It kind of
Which
it
is
kind
weird
of is,
because it's weird because I mean, this is just me making something up, but like I feel like if someone did that today, it would be frowned upon by like the opposing manager and stuff. But it's like actually he's helping your team. Like
right.
you have a double play chance now because he stopped at first.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's like, and you can't say it's poor sportsmanship if he's up
Yeah.
like 10, if he's up like 10-1.
But it also feels like it would be because it's like, yeah, think about it in like Little League. Like if you're winning or losing by so much, you get to a point where it's like if there's a pass ball, you just don't advance another base.
Yeah.
Like you get to
Well,
that point, right?
remember Chris Woodward wanted that with the
Oh
Fernando
yeah, he
Tatis
did
Jr.
want that.
thing
He did.
back in 2020.
2020. Yeah. That's like the only thing I remember Chris Woodward as a manager for.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing that anyone remembers, honestly.
Yeah, that's completely fair. That's completely fair. Um, so yeah, like that's my thing with cycles is I think they're cool. Like they are cool when they end really well. Like obviously, aren't there two Rockies players with Arenado and Gonzalez who ended it on like a walk-off home run, or was it just one
Gonzalez
of them?
did, yeah.
Did Arenado complete a cycle on
He
Father's
did. That
Day?
was the Father's Day game.
Yeah,
It
like
was a walk up. Well, they both did walk up home runs to complete the cycle,
yeah.
which is
So
like that
like
adds another element of coolness to it.
right. So that's cool. Ending it on a home run is cool. Ending it on a triple, which is arguably the most exciting play in baseball, is really, really cool because that's, you know, 10 seconds, or if you're Benji Molina, like 25 seconds of just excitement, just, you know, waiting at the potential of them reaching third base. It's usually like there's not really a lot of stand-up triples that happen in baseball. Like usually you have to dive in feet first or head first to get that triple. So when it ends like that, yeah, it's cool, but ending it
Yeah.
on a single, it just doesn't have the same bite to it, really.
No, it doesn't.
So yeah, I mean, you know, smash that like button, go in the comments, tell me what you think. Anyone anyone listening.
Hit the
But yeah,
bell.
if you disagree, go ahead and comment. If you agree, like the video and comment. I don't know how this stuff works, but yeah, anything more before we get into players to highlight?
No, let's talk about it.
All right, now we will get into our Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023 edition of How About That?
He's striking out less, walking more, and he's also making better contact.
Turning into a strikeout machine just out of nowhere.
He's been excellent all around this year.
He is getting a
How about that?
So for my how about that today, I'm talking about a guy that I think has been very quietly been maybe the best bat in Major League Baseball for about 3 weeks now. I'm talking about Kerry Carpenter of the Detroit Tigers. He's been kind of crushing the ball lately. Since August 2nd, he is slashing 394, 444, 818 for a 1263 OPS and a Major League leading 245 weighted runs created plus. He is also tied for the Major League lead in home runs in the span with 8. So yeah, major league leader in home runs, major league leader in weighted runs created plus. During the span, 29.6% of his batted balls have been hard hit and in the sweet spot, which is a great combo. And that is the 8th highest ranking among the 67 hitters with at least 50 batted balls. And on that same list of 67, Kerry Carpenter ranks 11th in barrel rate with 14.8%, 11th in expected batting average with a 323, 7th in expected slugging with a 637, and a 9th in expected weighted on base average with a 429. And he has particularly crushed four-seamers, changeups, and curveballs in this span. And I know that seems like a very arbitrary list of pitches, but that's the most used fastball, the most used off-speed pitch, and the most used breaking ball on that list, except maybe sliders are a little bit over curveballs, but it's pretty similar. And against those three pitches, he is a 455 batting average and an 848 slugging, and both of those rank third among the 64 hitters with at least 225 batted balls against them. So Kerry Carpenter is hitting pretty much every pitch extremely well, and he's hitting the ball hard as well, and he's making the right kind of contact.
Kerry Carpenter.
How about that?
Yeah, Kerry Carpenter doing amazing. So yeah, for my how about that, I was thinking like there were two guys that really stood out here in the past couple of weeks, and I figured you would go with one of them, and you did. So I just went and did both. I did both. Because I figured they're both on the same team. They're doing well. They're young guys that potentially are part of the future in Detroit. Which is why I'm highlighting both Spencer Torkelson and, as you highlighted, Kerry Carpenter. So I'll start with Kerry Carpenter because I'm just piggybacking off of you. In his last 16 games, hitting .410 with a 1323 OPS. Out of 179 qualified hitters, his average ranks 5th, on base percentage ranks 6th, slugging and OPS both rank 2nd, and he has the highest fWAR in all of baseball in his last 16 games. And out of 127 hitters with 200 plus pitches seen in the span, his expected slugging ranks 6th and expected WOBA ranks 11th. His average exit velocity has gone from 90.3 miles per hour before the span to 91.8 miles per hour in the span. His sweet spot rate has gone from 34% to 45%. I imagine also that hard hit sweet spot rate has seen a great increase as well. As you mentioned, that's one of the highest hard hit sweet spot rates in baseball. And in total, Kerry Carpenter has the 5th most batted balls in the sweet spot in the span. Along with that, his barrel rate has gone from 10% to 16%. And in total, he has the 4th most barrels in this span. So Kerry Carpenter from both of us getting a how about that. And then also a guy who's been capturing the baseball world the past couple of weeks is Spencer Torkelson. If you don't know the significance of him breaking out, it is a big deal because he's the first overall draft pick from 2020 and was a highly touted prospect. I think top 10. Was
also a Chatham Anglers legend.
Chatham Anglers legend and
obligatory
a top 10 prospect for his entire minor league career. So him breaking out is really nice for the Tigers. In his last 12 games, he is hitting .395 with a 1537 OPS, and out of 1537, by the way, that's I meant to emphasize that more, but that's crazy. Out of 185 qualified hitters, his on-base percentage ranks 5th, and his slugging, OPS, weighted runs created plus, and fWAR all rank 1st. Out of 120 hitters with 150 plus pitches seen in the span, Spencer Torkelson's expected slugging is the highest by 151 points, and his expected WOBA is the highest by 36 points. It is hard to have that wide of a margin when you're talking expected statistics, but Spencer Torkelson is doing just that. His sweet spot rate has gone from 34% before the span to 47% in the span. Along with that, Torkelson's fly ball rate has gone from 31% to 38%, and his average exit velocity on fly balls has gone from 93.6 miles per hour to 101.6 miles per hour. The average fly ball that Torkelson is hitting is 101.6 miles per hour off the bat. And out of 46 hitters with 10 plus fly balls in this span, his average exit velocity on them is 2nd highest. And even more remarkably, his barrel rate has gone from 13% before the span, which is already good, to 31% in this span. Almost a third of his batted balls are barrels, where the league average is about 8%. Out of 145 hitters with 50 plus batted balls in this span, Torkelson has the highest barrel rate, and he also has the most total barrels in this span. Never mind percentages. And it is the only 12-game span by a Tiger 23 or younger with 8+ home runs and 4+ doubles. And it is also the only 12-game span by a Tiger 23 or younger with 8+ home runs and 6+ walks. So Spencer Torkelson making some Tiger history with how well he's doing at how young of an age he is at, and really showing us why he was such a highly touted prospect and such a high draft pick. He is getting a.
How about that?
Very nice.
All right, so now we shall get go from the highs to the lows, where we're talking players and subjects that have been underperforming with our August 22nd, 2023 edition of Slightly Alarming Statistics. He's been barreling up the ball way less.
He's not missing bats. He's not getting the ball on the ground, and people are hitting it in the air more.
It's been so bad. He is getting a.
Slightly alarming.
Yeah, so for my Slightly Alarming, another Cape League legend, shout out to the Brewster Whitecaps, as I'm about to highlight how one of their previous players has been doing poorly. But I'm talking about Reed Detmers of the Angels, and he has not looked, I don't want to say like himself, because I feel like we still really haven't seen Reed Detmers take the step up that we hoped he would this year, but it's been particularly bad over the last 2 months. Since the start of July, he has a 7.22 ERA and a 6.24 FIP in his last 8 starts. He doesn't even qualify for ERA at this span, and it's not because he doesn't have enough starts, it's because he hasn't got enough innings in the starts. Throughout this span, 21.7% of his total pitches have been in game day zone 13, which is an inside and low pitch to right-handers and a low and outside pitch to lefties. 21% of all pitches he's thrown have been there. And that's the 11th highest rate among the 124 pitchers with at least 500 pitches thrown total. And looking most specifically into his four-seam fastball, that's his most used pitched. In the span, opponents are hitting .333 and slugging .794 against his fastball. That average ranks 12th worst, and his slugging ranks 4th worst among the 94 pitchers with at least 200 four-seamers thrown. I know I'm going out of order here, but going back to the total pitches being in game day zone 13, he's only gotten a swing on 29.4% of those pitches. That is 3% below the major league average. So Reed Detmers, he's not been throwing strikes consistently, and when he does, he's getting tattooed, especially on his most used pitched.
Yeah, Reed Detmers.
Slightly alarming.
Has had quite the up and down career thus far. You know, granted, he's only 23 at this point, so still figuring it out. But yeah, unfortunate, especially at a time where the Angels really need success from their guys. It is unfortunate that it has not been going well for him as of late. My slightly alarming also has to do with the Angels. It is another subject. It is the Angels offense. It has been really silent for the entire month of August. The Angels offense in the month of August are hitting .212 with a .607 OPS and 61 weighted runs created plus. They have the worst average on base percentage, 3rd worst slugging, and 2nd worst OPS in the month of August. And the Angels also have the worst expected batting average, expected slugging, and expected WOBA in August. Their team walk rate has gone from 9.2% before the span to 4.7% in the month of August. And their team walk to strikeout ratio has gone from 0.38 to 0.17 in this span. So their walk to strikeout rate has been cut by more than half in the month of August. And they also, with that, just breaking down where they're at in each category, the Angels have the 3rd highest strikeout rate, the lowest walk rate, and the lowest walk to strikeout ratio in baseball this month. Their chase rate has gone from 28% before the span to 36% in this span. They have the highest chase rate in baseball by 2.9 percentage points, and they also have the 2nd highest whiff rate in the month of August. Along with that, this month, the Angels have had 9 hitters take 30 or more plate appearances, and 6 of them have sub 600 OPSs, and 7 of them have sub 80 weighted runs created pluses. So 7 of the 9 guys that they have thrown out there for, thrown up to bat 30 or more times this month are more than 20% below average, which is like around or below replacement, unfortunately. Breaking it down individually, Randall Grichuk, who they acquired via trade, pretty much right at the deadline, he is hitting 159 with a 483 OPS and 66 plate appearances for them this month. Hunter Renfroe, who they acquired via trade in the offseason, he is hitting 197 with a 546 OPS, 30% strikeout rate, and 3% walk rate in 64 plate appearances. Brandon Drury, another offseason addition, is hitting 233 with a 667 OPS, 27% strikeout rate, and 0 walks in 60 plate appearances. And the worst of all is Mickey Moniak, who actually had some really high praise and good numbers leading up to this month. He is hitting 138 with a 377 OPS, negative 14 weighted runs created plus, 47% strikeout rate, and 2% walk rate in 59 plate appearances this month. So the Angels offense, unfortunately, as a whole, kind of in a critical time for the organization, is getting a
Slightly alarming.
And that will do it for players to highlight and subjects to highlight. And we shall get into a preview of the week ahead, where I will be discussing the series to watch. Daniel will be looking at the day-by-day starting pitching matchups. As far as series to watch, Red Sox Astros is a good one. The Red Sox are fighting for their playoff lives, as we're probably going to discuss with Chris Cotillo here. Or excuse me, that we already discussed.
No, we definitely did, yeah.
Yeah, we definitely did. So yeah, and the Astros are kind of like, after getting swept by the Mariners, are kind of also fighting for playoff lives. You know, they're in a playoff spot right now, but they're not super far ahead of the rest of the pack right now. They're only a game and a half up on the Blue Jays, who are out of the playoff race. So this is an important series for them too. Along with that, Phillies Giants, both teams in the wild card spot. Giants have been kind of falling as of late and need to pick it up if they want to keep that playoff spot right now. And the premier series to watch is between the two AL East foes in the Baltimore Orioles and Toronto Blue Jays. Orioles have been atop the division for a good month now, almost a good month now. And the Blue Jays, meanwhile, are a game out in the wild card race, a very competitive wild card race, and they need to keep winning games and win the hard games to potentially get that playoff spot. So check out Orioles Blue Jays starting tonight. What do you got for the day-by-day starting pitching matchups?
So tonight on Tuesdays, we're recording this. We have Kyle Harrison making his major league debut, one of the premier pitching prospects in baseball and the top prospect for the San Francisco Giants. He's going to be facing the Phillies tonight in Citizens Bank Park. You might want to watch that one because it'll be very interesting. You will have Yusei Kikuchi and Grayson Rodriguez facing each other in Blue Jays Orioles at Camden. Josiah Gray and Carlos Rodon facing each other in Nationals Yankees at Yankee Stadium. Bobby Miller will be facing the Cleveland Guardians tonight as Noah Syndergaard takes on his old team that traded him about 3 weeks ago. Ahmed Rosario will be making his return to Cleveland. That's fun. Tyler McGill and Bryce Elder will be facing off in Mets Braves. I almost just named it Cape Leaguer there by accident. Tanner Houck and Justin Verlander will face each other in Red Sox Astros. That'll be in Minute Maid Park. Bailey Ober and Wade Miley will face each other in Twins Brewers in Milwaukee. Graham Ashcraft and Lucas Giolito, two struggling pitchers looking to fix themselves, will go in Reds Angels at Angel Stadium. Jesus Luzardo and Blake Snell will face each other in Marlins Padres in San Diego. And matchup of the night comes from Rangers Diamondbacks. It's John Gray versus Zach Gallen.
Yeah, solid.
John Gray, a guy who has pitched in Arizona before in the playoffs in a wild card game. So then on Wednesday, Matt Liberatore will be facing the Pirates for the Cardinals. That's a 12:35 start in Pittsburgh. Jamison Tyone and Tarek Skubal will face each other in Cubs Tigers. That's in Detroit. George Kirby and Michael Kopech will face each other in Mariners and White Sox. That is in Chicago. Kenta Maeda and Corbin Burns will face each other in Twins Brewers. That is two teams that are geographically pretty close, and that's in Milwaukee. Alex Cobb and Michael Lorenzen will face each other in Giants Phillies in Philly. Sandy Alcantara will face the Padres for the Marlins in Petco. Aaron Savali will be facing the Rockies for the Rays. Chris left. Chris left the call. I'm just going to keep going. Aaron Savali will be facing the Rockies for the Rays in Tampa. Kevin Gausman and Jack Flaherty will face each other in Blue Jays Orioles. That's going to be in Baltimore, like I mentioned. Mackenzie Gore will be facing the Yankees for the Nationals. He looked really good his last time out. Clayton Kershaw will be facing the Guardians for the Dodgers in Cleveland. Jose Quintana and Charlie Morton will face each other in Mets Braves. Chris Sale and Jose Urquidy will face each other in Red Sox Astros. And matchup of the afternoon comes from Reds Angels. It is Andrew Abbott versus Shohei Ohtani.
This conversation is over.
And that'll do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go check out the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. Subscribe to it. Check out all the digital content. Check out our shorts. Check out our playlist, the Baseball History Series, all our guest interviews, including our most recent one with Chris Cotillo. And before that, it was Mike Petriello. And if you want to follow us on social media, follow me on X at Chris_Gianta, and follow Daniel on both X and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we are talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball once again. See you then.